Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on our digital lives to look at the hidden filing system that runs everything. We're going to talk about the magic that turns just total information chaos into those strangely personal experiences we get online every single day. Let's dive right in. You know that feeling, right? You're scrolling and you swear your phone is reading your mind. Well, it's not exactly magic, but it is a masterclass in organization. And it all starts with this thing we call data. You know, every single time you use your phone or your computer, searching for something, liking a post, watching a video, you're creating a little piece of data. Now, multiply that by billions of people, and you have an absolute tidal wave of information. So how on earth is all of that collected, sorted, and actually made useful?
Okay, so first things first, let's just try to get our heads around the incredible scale of this thing. We are living in a true data deluge.
And this flood of information, it actually has a name: big data. And it's not just called big because of its size. As we're about to see, this kind of data has a really unique and kind of complex personality.
So what is big data? Well, at its core, it's any amount of information that's so huge, so fast, or so messy that trying to manage it with, say, a simple spreadsheet would be like trying to catalog an entire library on a single Post-it note. It's not going to work. You need a totally different kind of system.
And to really get what makes this data so different, experts talk about its 5 key traits, what they call the 5 Vs. You can think of these as the 5 parts of its personality that we absolutely have to understand before we can even begin to work with it.
First up, there's volume. And yeah, this is the obvious one. We're not just talking big, we're talking astronomical. Just try to imagine every YouTube video watched, every credit card swiped, every single GPS location pinged, all around the globe in just the last minute. That's the kind of volume we're dealing with here.
Next, you've got velocity, the incredible speed of it all. This isn't data you can just file away and look at next week. No, this is a stock price changing in milliseconds, or your Uber needing your location right this second. If you can't process it instantly, the opportunity is just gone. Then there's variety. See, this data doesn't show up in neat, tidy rows and columns. It's a chaotic jumble of, well, everything. Your vacation photos, a podcast audio file, the text from a news article, your smartwatch data. It's basically the digital equivalent of a junk drawer.
And this is so important: veracity. How much can you actually trust the data? Is that product review fake? Did someone accidentally mistype their address? If the data is wrong, any decision you make based on it is going to be wrong too. It's that classic garbage in, garbage out problem, just on a massive, massive scale.
And finally, all of this leads to value. Because what's the point, right? The ultimate goal is to sift through all that massive, fast, messy, and sometimes unreliable data to find a nugget of insight that's actually useful. You know, like that perfect movie recommendation or a more efficient delivery route.
Okay, so we have this massive, fast, and messy data. But before we could even think about finding value in it, we have to solve a really basic problem. How do we store it without creating a total nightmare?
So let's start with the simplest idea you might have: a flat file database. Really, you can just think of this as one gigantic spreadsheet where you dump every single piece of information into a single table. It sounds simple, right? But it has a huge flaw.
Just look at this example. See how for every country in Asia, we're repeating all the continent's information, its size, and its population? The data for Asia is typed out again and again and again. It's super inefficient, and honestly, it's a recipe for mistakes. What if someone just misspells it one time? Well, this problem actually has a name. It's called data redundancy. And it's not just messy, it wastes a ton of space and, more importantly, it hugely increases the chances of errors. So there has to be a better way, right?
And of course, there is. And this is where our hero of the story comes in: the relational database. It's an incredibly smart, really elegant solution to this problem of messy, repetitive data.
And here is that aha moment. Instead of one giant repetitive table, we just split the data into 2 smaller, more logical tables. We've got one for countries and one for continents. Notice how the continent info is only listed once now? So clean, so efficient. Much easier to manage. But how do they stay connected?
They connect using something called keys. The first is a primary key. This is just a unique identifier for each row in a table. The easiest way to think of it is like a social security number or a student ID. It's the one thing that makes that row unique. And the second piece of the magic is the foreign key. This is simply a primary key from one table that we put into another table to create a link or a relationship between them.
It's the piece that snaps them together.
So if we look at our example again, the word Asia in the country table is the foreign key. It's not the main info for that table, but it creates a direct link back to the continents table. This lets the database look up all the details about Asia whenever it needs to, without having to store them over and over again.
Okay, so we've gone from a tidal wave of messy data to these nice, neat, interconnected tables. So now, for the good part, the payoff. How do we actually use this brilliantly organized information?
We use something called a query. And a query is really just a fancy word for asking your database a question. For example, you could ask, hey, show me all the countries in Europe, or show me all the streaming content that's been watched more than 1 million times.
And this is really where it all comes together in the real world. Netflix analyzes our viewing habits to recommend or even create new shows for us. Delivery companies analyze vehicle data to find the most efficient routes, saving tons of time and fuel. Banks analyze transactions to spot fraud almost instantly. This is that value we were talking about earlier, and it's all made possible by this really clever, organized structure.
So the next time an app recommends something you actually love, you'll know the secret isn't mind reading. It's just a well-organized relational database and a very clever query. It kind of makes you think, now that you see the structure behind it all, what questions would you want to ask?